Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Neil, and today I'm excited to discuss a groundbreaking topic in behavioral economics, prospect theory, an analysis of decision under risk by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. This theory revolutionized our understanding of how people make decisions under risk. Let's start with the significance of this seminal work. Before prospect theory, traditional economic models assumed that individuals make decisions based on rational calculations of expected utility. However, Kahneman and Tversky challenge these assumptions by introducing a comprehensive framework that better captures how people actually behave in risky situations. Our objectives today are to delve into the key insights and concepts of prospect theory, discuss its implications for decision-making across various domains, including finance, marketing, and public policy. So let's look at some classic problems from Kahneman and Tversky's experiments. In problem one, participants were given a choice between a 33% chance to win $2,500 or a sure gain of $2,400. Surprisingly, 82% chose the sure gain, demonstrating risk aversion for gains. Now consider problem two, where participants faced similar decision but with slightly altered probabilities. They could choose between a 33% chance to win $2,500 or a 34% chance to win $2,400. This time, 83% chose the risky option, despite the similarity to problem one. These results highlight inconsistencies in traditional utility theory, as it fails to explain why these preferences exist. In problem three, participants had to choose between an 80% chance of losing $4,000 or a sure loss of $3,000. Here, 92% opted for the risky loss, showing risk-seeking behavior for high probability losses. This contrasts sharply with the risk aversion observed for gains, suggesting that our risk preferences depend heavily on whether we're dealing with potential gains or losses. Now let's examine problems 4 and 5. In problem 4, participants were given a $1,000 and asked to choose between a 50% chance of winning another $1,000 or a sure gain of $500. Here, 84% chose the sure gain. Contrast this with problem 5, where participants were given $2,000 and had to choose between a 50% chance of losing $1,000 or a sure loss of $500. In this case, 69% chose the risky option, preferring the potential to avoid a loss. These examples show that values are assigned relative to a reference point, not final outcomes, which is a key insight of prospect theory. Let's move on to problem 6, which deals with low probability events. In problem 6, participants had to choose between a 0.1% chance of winning $5,000 or a sure gain of $5. Interestingly, 72% chose the risky option, indicating risk-seeking behavior for low probability gains. In problem 6, participants faced the choice between a 0.1% chance of losing $5,000 or a sure loss of $5. Here, 80% chose the sure loss, demonstrating a risk aversion for low probability losses. These results suggest that individuals tend to overweight low probabilities and underweight high probabilities, leading to decision-making biases. Traditional economic theory assumes that individuals are perfectly rational and make decisions based on linear utility functions. However, prospect theory incorporates psychological factors, providing a more realistic model of decision-making. Prospect theory introduces a nonlinear value function, where outcomes are assessed relative to a reference point, not in absolute terms. This framework explains risk aversion for gains and risk-seeking for losses, as well as behavioral anomalies like the endowment effect and the status quo bias. Here we see the value function of prospect theory. Notice how it's concave for gains and convex for losses, illustrating the diminishing sensitivity to changes in wealth. This graph also highlights greater sensitivity to losses than gains, a phenomenon known as loss aversion. The value function captures how people perceive gains and losses relative to a reference point. For small gains, the function is steep, indicating a strong reaction, but it flattens out for larger gains, showing diminishing returns. Similarly, the loss side of the function is steeper than the gain side, indicating that losses feel more impactful than equivalent gains. Loss aversion is a key concept in prospect theory, suggesting that losses loom larger than gains. This is reflected in the abrupt change in the slope of the value of the function at the origin. Studies show that the ratio of slopes for small to moderate gains and losses is approximately 2 to 1, meaning losses are felt about as twice as strong as gains. In real-world examples, this can be seen in investment behavior. Investors often hold on to losing investments, hoping for a rebound, rather than accepting the loss and moving on. Similarly, gamblers may continue to bet on after losses to try and recoup them. illustrating risk-seeking behavior in the face of potential losses. The endowment effect is the phenomenon where people value objects more highly simply because they own them. This leads to discrepancy between the amount they are willing to pay to acquire an object and the amount they would demand to give it up. For example, consider Bordeaux wines. An economist who owns these wines may value them more now that they have appreciated in value, becoming reluctant to sell or buy them at the new market price. This effect is also seen with personal belongings, where items of clothing, for instance, are valued more highly just because they are owned. The status quo bias is the strong tendency to stick with the current state of affairs due to loss aversion. People often tend to prefer maintaining their existing situation rather than take a risk, even if the potential benefits outweigh the risks. This bias is evident in our daily routines and habits. We might stick with familiar routines even when there are opportunities for improvement, simply because the discomfort of change feels like a loss. Another example is subscription services, where people continue to pay for services they no longer use, simply to avoid the perceived loss of cancel. In conclusion, prospect theory offers profound insights into the psychological factors that influence decision-making under uncertainty. By highlighting the importance of reference points, loss aversion, and the nonlinear value function, Kahneman and Tversky's work provide a more accurate depiction of human behavior compared to traditional economic models. These insights have far-reaching applications across various fields. In finance, they help explain investor behavior and market anomalies. In marketing, they help guide strategies for pricing and promotions. In public policy, they form initiatives aimed at encouraging beneficial behaviors and discouraging harmful ones. In healthcare, understanding these principles can improve patient decision-making and adherence to treatments. Thank you for your attention. I hope you found this exploration of prospect theory insightful and thought-provoking.